this video, I'm going to try to explore the topic about past lives and how that plays a role in someone's awakening journey in this lifetime that we're in. So, as you can tell by now, there are many spiritual teachers, and we're not really talking to each other. And it's really because we're all at different states of consciousness. That's really the main reason, is we're all at different levels of light or different states that we're accessing. That's really the reason why we don't agree with each other and we don't collaborate. And so why is that? Why can't people just all get to the same page? It's a very legitimate question to ask. Um, and that's one of the roadblocks for people to, go further. Groups of people, actually. So that's why I want to explore this topic about past lives and how that plays quite a significant role. Besides your current life. Your current life also plays a significant role. But not only your current life, also where you came from when you incarnated here. That also seems to play a very significant role. So I want to just first explain that about my own awakening into, past lives and such. And keep in mind, of course, this is still imaginary, right? If you did awaken to some kind of past life you've had, that's still obviously an imaginary life, you could say. But that life, what happened in that lifetime, does carry to some extent to your next life. So for me, it was very strange because most of what I awakened to was just that I was an angel. So I didn't even have much of a past life that I could awaken to, compared to what I would hear about from other spiritual people like doing this work. So what I awakened to about my past life is I was some kind of higher angel. And why do I emphasize higher angel? Because not all angels are equally awake. That's what I learned, is even amongst angels, there's different levels of awakeness. Some are much closer to Kingdom of Heaven or Christ than others, and some have much more egos, even if you're an angel. So that's what I learned from my mushroom awakenings as well as sober awakenings I've had. And as I mentioned before, part of my questioning was also why I incarnated into my particular family, because I was really going through hell with them. And so I kept asking this question over and over. And it wasn't until much later, actually, when I started to fully awaken to Christ's consciousness, like, it was much later in my journey, actually, that I started to get some real answers. And the answers, they're not pleasant. It's essentially, when I was an angel, I was basically tricked into that situation, to a large extent, because I was not awake enough, like Christ is, for example, to see through the potential problems of incarnating into that family. So, what do I mean by being tricked? It's sort of like, because a lot of, you could say, if you're accessing like a certain level of consciousness, like heart consciousness, you have this like desire to help and be helpful, and you have some like naiveness about you. Um, Perhaps that's something you can gather from, let's say, something like Matt Kahn's group. There's a lot of like naiveness to that kind of state of consciousness. So what I'm saying is that I couldn't see through my parents' ego through that level of consciousness when I incarnated into that situation. And now this is where it gets harder to try to explain this in public because it's going to be unpleasant. But in short, it's like my mother tricked me by exaggerating her life circumstance in a sense, like she was really wanting like a child and some kind of assistance with her life situation. And that was part of, a lot of, you could say the first half of my life was trying to help her. I really did try to help her for the, up to, I guess, almost like my teenage years. So for a long time, I couldn't see through the problems with her. Like I said, I was enmeshed with her. And her ego only started to truly come out and start really going against me and attacking me, really, to the detriment of my well-being and interests to individuate, like I said. That started around like early teenage years. Well, it actually started sooner than that, but I didn't pick it up like that until later. So that's what I mean by being tricked, is that throughout my life she would overplay this victim card. That that she was just like a victim of the life she's in because of, her childhood and her past and all that. And don't get me wrong, I do still consider that. That's still factored in. But I'm saying despite that, I was still tricked by, that set of circumstance because she still had way too much ego. And when I say that, I mean she was very selfish. That's what I really mean by having lots of ego. It's like she was trying to turn me into her slave. That's really how, what I became aware of since I was like a teenager, basically. And you can see how this is not some nice realization to have about your own mother, nor is it nice to talk about, right? But it's relevant because of this past life topic, unfortunately. So I'm saying that's what I awakened to in my situation, why I incarnated into that family. And so how does this work with past life? I'm saying I was already, I guess, quite awake, is what I realized when I came to this, to this situation, to this body. That's what I realized. Especially as I was talking to like peers, like in spiritual communities, I realized that I was already quite awake without even doing much of any spiritual work, and that's why my mushroom trips immediately got me towards more light than what most people seem to be able to access. So this concerns what you're able to access on psychedelics, for one, and as well, what kind of psychedelics you're even drawn to. Like, this is the thing that I'm discovering now, is how much ego you have dictates, like when you incarnate here, also dictates what kind of psychedelics you might be attracted to. Because as it turns out, there are certain, like, some of the ones that are being promoted, like 5-MeO DMT, was completely incompatible with me, and I almost died on it. Like, it's not exaggeration. I literally had like a, you could say, not really, both like a physical reaction, like a very bad physical and spiritual reaction. Like there was something demonic when I tried to take that, based on Leo's teaching, basically. Um, so I was spiritually very incompatible with that substance. But most of his followers are not like this. And I've determined that it's really a function of how much light they have. How much, when I say light, it's also an aspect of conscious, right? So, you access certain things on different drugs. So I immediately just grasped that this substance was not going to lead me to higher states of consciousness because it was dragging me to a lower state, like a much lower state, a demonic state. Because I was not in that kind of state, both soberly or elsewhere, and that's something you can distinguish on any substance. Like even on mushrooms, I had trips where it was more demonic in nature, like darker. It would take me to darker places, and then there are trips that would take me to lighter places, right? So I was able to distinguish those things. And for me, because I was already a light being, I was not drawn to the darker stuff in the first place. I just kept seeking the light because that's already my nature, and that's what I ended up getting more and more of because of what I kept asking for, basically. Um, so this is something it's hard to talk about because trips are so personal and hard to just describe in videos, especially in just one video, right? But I just want to mention that because it does seem like you could say my past life and previous um, state of consciousness before I incarnate here played a significant role as well, both in terms of what kind of teachers I was drawn to and what I was accessing on mushrooms and what kind of psychedelics I was drawn to. And as well, I did interact with quite a few therapists. I think that did help me being exposed to certain aspects of consciousness that you don't really see in most spiritual teachers. Like that's a different experience, right? Talking to a therapist. That's a different experience than listening to someone in a video. Right? Especially if you're talking to a more advanced therapist that knows what they're talking about. So I'm saying all these things played a role, and I want to point out that it's not a small thing because it determines which teacher you're going to follow. Because I was a follower, right, before I reached the state. Because a lot of people are very turned off by this teacher named Jesus Christ, but I was drawn to this teacher before I came here. This name was never a turnoff for me. And this is not an accident. Like, this is actually related to how much light you have in the first place. That's what I'm finding, is the more light you already have when you came here, the more you would be drawn to teachers like Jesus Christ, basically. And that's what it seems like. And so if you have a lot of ego, basically, your reaction to that name is going to be much more negative. This is like, because that name carries a certain kind of frequency just on its own, even if you don't know what he teaches. Like, that name carries a certain light frequency that I was drawn to. So why do I mention that? Because my, attraction to that name, and to, I guess, just the recognition of some sense of recognition that this was a teacher I could trust and follow, because I had to have some initial faith, right? You can't verify right away what he's trying to teach you. Like, it takes time to verify it. But I believed what he was teaching me. But most people, they don't. Like, why is that? That's what I'm trying to explore with you. And I'm saying it's because of my state of conscience when I incarnated here. But besides, like, my life experiences that I was trying to say, is also how much light I already carried with me when I came here. And so, as it turns out, this is kind of rare. So that's why I'm saying there's different awakeness amongst angels, even. So yeah, as a result of me just not having any kind of negative feelings towards this teacher, as well as just my resonance with the text, because of how much light was in there, right? I recognized the light and basically the divinity in that text, and I was able to recognize it because I was close. That's really how it works. And so people who are not close to it, it's not going to be read the same way. You're not going to be drawn to it the same way. You might even really dislike it. Like, I've had certain individuals where they really didn't like what was being said there. But that's, again, a function of how much light you already have when you came across that text and this teacher. So I'm trying to say that all of this plays a role in terms of how much you can awaken in this lifetime, like vertically awaken, and as well what kind of teachers you may or may not be drawn to. So that's how tricky everything is. Like, because I see people drawn to certain teachers and not the others. And even though I know that the teachers they're drawn to are not teaching the truth, like, not 100%, like, they're still not fully awake, that's what I mean. But, I guess they would have to graduate past those teachers first. So I'm saying, when it comes to, you could say, epistemology, metaphysics, God, like, these things that certain teachers emphasize or talk about, I want you to just consider that this is not a small deal in how you determine such things, in how you come to your conclusions and your access, your awakenings, like what you can access, both soberly and on psychedelics. Your past lives, and not just one life, probably like many lives, they all play a role into what you're accessing in this current life. So, like, because clearly people are just at different levels of consciousness. We're not accessing the same states like most of us. And as well, like, for some people it's easier and it's harder for others, so I'm just trying to explore why that is. So some people call this like karma as well, like, kind of like what you have accumulated before, consciously or unconsciously. Like, you're paying the price for it. You're not able to access the highest state precisely because perhaps the cumulative work hasn't been done, like, or not enough work. Basically, that's what I'm kind of gathering. Of course, like, who you come into contact with, like teachers in this lifetime, does also play a big role. Like, things might be different if you didn't come into contact with certain individuals in this lifetime. That's what I'm trying to say. So there's other factors at play, right? There's not just one factor. But I just want to alert you guys to this lifetimes factor that doesn't seem to get talked about very much, but it seems to play a significant role. Because when I started to, like, seriously awaken on psychedelic mushrooms, it didn't take me that long to to go past teachers like Leo Gora and Matt Kahn. Like, I would say within about my first five to 10 trips, um, I started to awaken beyond both of those teachers. But their followers are still trapped with them, from my perspective, right? It's like, from my perspective, masses of people are still trapped with their minds. But I awakened beyond them quite early on. So it's pretty strange, even for me, to be like, what is it? And the main conclusion I have is just, I was already accessing a lot of light. And that's why I was accessing different things on my trips. Like, and being able to tell truth from falsehood. That's really, when you have more light, you can tell more truth from falsehood. So that's what I mean. And why I was able to recognize Course in Miracles as the truth. Even though I wasn't even like Christian or anything. Like, I didn't go to church. I've only been to church like a few times at best, right? Like, I was not strictly Christian. So you see how, controversial again this could be. And but yeah, I because of how much light I carry, I recognize the truth in that text. Compared to what the other teachers are teaching and what I was accessing on psychedelics. So anyways, I hope that helps to some extent. I just wanted to share that because I don't think that could be something that people miss with this work, is this past life and your state of consciousness when you came to this world. That plays a significant role as well to as to like who you're following, who you're going to follow and trust and believe as truth, basically.